Okay, good evening everybody. We've just counted the 48th day of the Omer. Tomorrow we count the last day of the Omer. And then we have Shavous. Shavous we spoke about last week as the center of the Jewish year. The central space that takes up no room, no expansion. Pesach has 7 days, Sukkot has 8 days. The Zohar says the center of the Jewish year is Shavous. As far as the halacha is concerned as being a Yom Tov, it has to have an expansion in time, 24 hours. But Shavous is the center. As we said last week, there's something very strange about Shavous because if you think about it, we're celebrating receiving the Torah. But in point of fact, the Torah we have today is not the Torah that we got on Shavous. We don't have the Torah that was given on Shavous. Moshe Rabbeinu came down, he smashed the luchos. That level, which is connected, everything to do with the first giving of the Torah, was lost to us. The Torah that we have today is the Torah of Yom Kippur. If we're celebrating the receiving of the Torah, then we should be celebrating that along with Yom Kippur. When Moshe Rabbeinu came down on Yom Kippur, he brought the Luchas HaShniyos, and that's the Torah we have today. And yet, we still celebrate Shavous, and interestingly enough, we call it Zman Matan Torah Seinu, the time of giving of the Torah, not the receiving of the Torah. Because I said, even though we received it, the Torah we have today is not that Torah. So, what is Shavous on a deeper level? What happened on Shavous? I want to say something tonight which is maybe a revolutionary idea, but it's an idea that if you can not understand it, more than understand it, relate to it, then it's something which will change your whole idea of what Emunah is. We talk about Emunah Sinai. That Emunah, belief in Hashem, comes from Sinai. The Mishnah in Avos starts off by saying the Moshe Kibel Torah Sinai, which is, the Maharal points out, other commentators point out, is a strange way of putting it. That Moshe received the Torah from a mountain. Moshe Kibel Torah me Hashem, Berha Sinai maybe. What does it mean that Moshe was Kibel Torah Sinai? The answer is that what happened at Sinai was an existential experience which changed the whole mahut, the whole essence of the Jewish people. And that's what we're celebrating. The Zohar Kodesh says, Istakal Kitchbricha Baraisa Ubara Alma, that a Kodesh Baruch Hu looked into the Torah and created the world. Everything in the world, everything that exists in the world comes from the blueprint of the Torah. Hashem looked into the Torah, He created the world, much like an architect. But there's a major difference. The simile, the parable, the moshel breaks down. Because once an architect has finished building his building, the blueprint is no more than an interesting artifact. It has no longer any input into the building. The building is the building is independent. The Torah, however, continues to nourish and to feed the energy of kiyum, the energy of existence, into everything that exists. And that's why I once heard from Rav Perlman, he should be well, that you see there are certain places in the Torah, Pashas Vayakel, talking about the setting up of the Torah, where the Torah often seems to be repeating itself. It goes to great detail. He once gave the analogy a bit like electricity, that certain things in this world require more amperage or more wattage in order for them to be able to exist, and therefore they require more psukim in the Torah. The Torah powers everything in this world. There's something else which is unusual about Shavous, which has to be understood, which is why was the Torah blown at Har Sinai? It says there were trumpets, the shofar blowing exceedingly loud. The Torah we normally connect with Rosh Hashanah. Rosh Hashanah is the anniversary of the creation of man. How was man created? It says in the Torah, Parshas Bereshis, Vayipach ba'apov nishmas chayim, and Hashem breathed into his nostrils, the nostrils of Adam Rishon, nishmas chayim, a living soul, vayihi ha'odam lenefesh chaya. And man became a living soul, nefesh chaya. The Targum Onkelos, the Aramaic translation, translates nefesh chaya as ruach mamalala, a speaking spirit. Speech is the ultimate expression of life. Does it mean to be a living soul? It means to be a speaking spirit. Speech is what defines a human being. And what created man, what brought man into existence, the electrical point, so to speak, in the Torah, through which man derived his existence, is through this posuk. Vayipach ba'apav nefesh chayam, vayihi ha'odam nefesh, the nefesh chaya. So man was plugged into existence through that posuk in the Torah. And speech is something essential to what it means to be a human being. There are two kinds of speech. As it says in Tehillim, in Psalms, Lahagid baboker chazdecha va'amunosecha baleilos. Man is supposed to express himself in two ways. Lagid baboker, to express in the morning, chazdecha, your kindness, va'amunosecha baleilos, and your faith in you at night. Faith is something which is connected to the night. There are two ways of perceiving the world. Almost all speech, and that's the speech of Lahagid baboker chazdecha, almost all speech in the world is related to ideas, expression of content, concepts. It's something that we can share, we can agree about, we can disagree. It's a common focus of discussion. Nefesh HaChaim explains that this world was created with the letter Bet. Bet signifies Bina. Bina comes from the same root as lavchin, to discern in English we say. Discernment requires two things to distinguish one between the other. Lavchin bein zeh lezeh, bein, Bina, same word. This is a world, most of our perception of the world is through what we call Bina, discernment. This is a table, this is a chair. We can argue, what is a table, what is a chair? That's something we can share. That's a system of ideas which is based on intellect. There's another perception, that's Lagid baboker chazdecha. The enumeration, the definition, the cataloging, the understanding of the different things that happen in this world. Ve'emunosecha baleilos. There's another system of perception that a person has, which is really what I want to speak about. This is to try and understand this idea. Another perception a person has, which has nothing to do with ideas. It's beyond any idea. It's deeper than any idea. It's stronger than any idea. It's a perception that each of us has that is axiomatically true, and it cannot be discussed, it cannot be shared, it cannot be argued over, it cannot be proved or disproved, and that is the perception of self, ani, anochi. The truth of my own existence is as axiomatic to myself. The fact that I exist is not something that I arrive at through a process of deduction, of question and answer. Am I here? Yes. It's the deepest thing that a person knows, it's the deepest thing he knows, and it's completely beyond, unassailable. Nobody can convince me that I'm not here. That's a knowledge which goes beyond, deeper than, above the intellectual ma'arechet system of ideas, which, as we said, which is normally expressed in words. Lagid baboker chazdecha va'amunosecha baleilos. Ruach Mamalala, man is capable of speaking these two ideas. And in point of fact, as we said, Hashem created man by breathing into his nostrils this speaking spirit. And Rosh Hashanah, we are given the instrument by which we can return that deepest knowledge of our own existence, which cannot be garbed in words, through something called the shofar, which is a sound and an inarticulate sound, a sound which goes beyond and above words, which is the inarticulate speech of the heart, which expresses the knowledge of a person's own existence, and that existence is none other than a perception, emunah. A person's sense of himself is not something intellectual. As we said, it's not perceived cerebrally, analytically. It's stronger, clearer than anything rational or intellectual. It's self-evident, it requires no proof, it's beyond contradiction or denial. I have absolutely no doubt of my existence whatsoever. Nobody does. And we're not playing mind games here, like we were at university, we used to sit up all night with cups of coffee and say, well, maybe we're not here at all. I'm not talking about mind games. It reminds me of the joke of the convicted murderer who was invited by the judge before he passed sentence to say a few words. And the murderer said, "You, Your Honor, and all of this court are figments of my imagination." So the judge says, "Fine, I'm sentencing you to the imaginary electric chair." Nobody lives like that. The knowledge, the surety of my own existence is something that is unassailable. And that knowledge of one's own existence is completely untransferable to somebody else. I can't express to you what it means to be me. Each one of us has that knowledge with regard to ourselves, but it's something incommunicable. It's not like any other knowledge, which is, as we said before, we can argue about it, we could talk about it, we could discuss it, we could analyze, That is something which is monolithic, axiomatic, unassailable. I, Anochi. As we said, the shofar is the way we express, so to speak, we give back to Hashem that ruach b'malala. Lagid ba'boker chasdecha, in the morning we're going to express your kindness as a Kodesh Baruch Hu. V'emunasecha ba'leilos. Our expression of emunah is something to do with the dark. Now, when we're talking about dark, it's difficult for us to really conceptualize what real dark is. Nowadays, pretty much anywhere you go in the world, it's illuminated, and the darkest thing we can find is probably, somewhat more than a cloudy day. But if you can imagine real dark, emunas chabaleilos, it says by the Akedah that HaKadosh Baruch Hu said to Abraham, "Below chosachta es bincha es yichidecha." Abraham, you have not withheld your son, your firstborn, your yichidecha. You haven't withheld. Lo chosachta. Chosachta, to withhold, is the same root as choshech, meaning darkness. True darkness is the withholding of everything else, of all outside perception. It's coming to my mind an experiment they did way back, I think, in the 70s, which I'll just choose this as a mashal. They wanted to do some experiments on sensory deprivation. And they took this volunteer and they dressed him in a wetsuit, they put him in a tank, which was at blood temperature. They removed from him all outside stimulus, the stimulus of heat and cold, blood temperature, water. He was floating. It was totally silent and totally dark. That is the experience of emunos chabaleilos. What is the ruach mamalala going to say? What does the ruach mamalala say when everything is removed from it? The emunos chabaleilos, la hagid emunos chabaleilos, is the expression of our deepest self, which is the expression of the shofar. As we said before, the inarticulate speech, the very knowledge, the very certainty of my own existence. Now, as we said, the Zohar says that it's Statel Kitchebrichu B'Raisa. Hashem looked into the Torah and He created the world. Everything in this world has to have a makor, has to have a socket, an electrical socket of kiyum by which it can exist. The Gemara in Masechet Shavous discussing Maimon Sinai says as follows. Va'oma Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi. Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi said, Kol dibor v'dibor sheyotze mepi HaKadosh Baruch Hu yotza nishmosan shal Yisrael. With every single one of the Aseret Dibros, of the Ten Commandments, the souls of the Jewish people left their bodies. Gemara, Daf Pei Ches Amud Beis, Shabbos, Gemara Shabbos, talking about Har Sinai. With every single word, with every one of the 10 utterances, as the secular world calls it, the 10 Commandments that Hashem uttered, the souls of the Jewish people left their bodies. They died. Why did they die? It wasn't that Hashem chas v'chalila killed them. It was quite simply when there was a revelation, of life itself, the makor ha'chaim, ki imucho hakor makor chaim. You, Hashem, are the source of life. When the source of something is revealed, every, so to speak, spark of that life has this irresistible desire to be drawn back to the source. And the life of each one of the Jewish people, with the revelation of life itself at Har Sinai, was inexorably drawn back to the makor, to the source of life. The Gemara asks the question, if that's true then, Kol dibor v'dibor sheyotza mepi HaKadosh Baruch Hu, yotza nishmosan shel Yisrael, the Jewish people's lives, souls were drawn back. Shenema, as it says the posik, nafshi yotza b'diboro, my soul went out with his word. Uma'acha shemedibor rishon yotza nishmosan, if their souls departed with the first word, dibor sheni heich kiblu, how could they then have accepted the second commandment if they already died? We know clearly there were 10 Aseret Dibros, 10 statements. And we know, Gemara talks about that for sure, the first two of them were certainly heard from the mouth, Kaviyochel, of Hashem. So if the first one they died, then how could they have heard the second one? The answer is, the Gemara says, Hori tal she'osid lachiyos boy mesim. The dew with which in future the dead will be brought back to life. Tchiyas HaMesim will be performed through dew. That's why in the second bracha of Shmona Esrei, which is the bracha of Yitzhak Avinu, which talks about Mechayei Meisim, that's why we include in that the prayer for Morid Atal or Morid Geshem. So, after their souls passed away, the dew that would be used in the future to vivify, to resurrect the dead, came and brought them back to life. As it says, it's a pasuk in Tehillim, Geshem nidvos tonif elokim nachlascha v'nil'a ata konanta. The dew came down and put their souls back into their bodies. But, and this is the key point I want to get to, Emunah comes from Sinai. Belief comes from Sinai. When HaKadosh Baruch Hu brought their souls back into their bodies using the tal of Tchiyas HaMesim, what was brought into their bodies was no longer powered in the Torah by Vayipach Ba'apov Nishmas Chaim. That was the original electricity by which mankind existed. When the souls of the Jewish people were replaced, revivified, brought back to life in their bodies, the posuk in the Torah that gave them life was Anochi. Anochi, Hashem Elokecha asher hotzitzicha me'eretz Mitzrayim mibeis avodim. I am the Lord your God who took you out of the land of Egypt from the house of slavery. That was the posuk that gave life to the Jewish people. They were no longer powered by Vayipach Ba'apav. Now, their life form was powered by that first posuk in the Torah. The Gemara says, on Daf Kuf Hey, Amud Aleph in the Gemara Shavous, Rabbi Yochanan says, Anochi, the first word of the Ten Commandments, is a notricon. I forget the word in English for notricon. When you take a sentence and you take the first letter of each of the words and you made a word out of that. What's it called?
Gematria.
I what?
Gematria?
No, not a gematria.
When you do what?
You take a sentence, right? And you take the first letter of each of the words in the sentence and you make a word out of it. There's a word in English which I can't remember. Maybe an anagram, yeah. Maybe it's an anagram. An anagram, I think that's right. Anyway, it's in Hebrew it's called notrikon, which I think is actually a Greek word. But ana, anochi. Anochi is notrikon, for listen to this, guys. Ana, nashi, kesivas, yahavis. Aramaic, ana, Hashem is saying, the notrikon of anochi. And this is what now powers the Jewish people. I, nafshi, myself, have written myself into the Torah and given it over to you. Meaning, from Sinai onwards, the knowledge of the existence of God and the deepest knowledge of my own existence, that axiomatic knowledge which goes beyond and above all intellect, become one and the same. This is what Emunah Misinai means. That at the deepest level of my existence, what was given to me at Sinai is a knowledge. That's what Emunah is. Emunah is not something which is intellectual. Something intellectual always can be open to question. Maybe I made a mistake, maybe I didn't get that quite right, maybe I made it, but the emunah of the Jewish people, which has stood us through all of these thousands of years, is something which is innate. And it comes from this moment at Sinai. And that is what Shavous is all about. Beneath everything else is a redefinition, a repowering of the soul of the Jewish people with this unmistakable clarity, Anochi. Hashem says, I have written myself into the Torah and I'm giving that over into you. I've put into your soul. No longer are you powered by Vayipach Ba'apov. That's gone now. That died with the first statement of Anochi. But what replaced it was this existential certainty. The Gemara in Sukkah says, Daf Nun Gimel Amud Aleph, Tanya Amru Alav al Hillel HaZaken. They said about Hillel HaZaken, Hillel, Kasher Samach B'Simchas Beis HaShoeva, when he was rejoicing at the time of the Simchas Beis HaShoeva. Amar Kain, he said thus, Im Ani Kan, Hakol Kan. If I am here, everything is here. Ve'im eini kan, mi kan. And if I'm not here, who is here? Rather seemingly strange statement that Hillel is saying about himself is, if I'm here, everything's here. And if I'm not here, then what's here? It's a strange remark until you remember that Ana is one of Hashem's names. Ana. Ana Hashem Hoshiana. Hashem, quite literally, is the I, capital I, of the world. And as we said before, that capital I of the world is what was plugged into our souls. If God is the eye of existence, the eye. If God is here, everything's here. And if Hashem is not here, then what is here? Nothing can be here. The Simchas Beis HaShveva, Tosfos says, was a ceremony in which water was drawn up from the spring in Gihon and brought up to the Beis HaMikdash and poured on the Mizbeach. On a deeper level, Beis HaShveva, drawing up, meant that what was drawn up through the celebration was spirituality from the depths of being. The true nature of all spirituality is the connection of my sense of existence to the source of all existence. When I connect my I to the ultimate I. That was the absolute reality revealed at Sinai, that Hashem was the Anochi, the Ani of existence. And just as no one doubts the existence of his or her own I, so at Sinai the Jewish people achieved this level that no one doubted the existence of the I of the world, of Hashem. Nefesh HaChaim, other writers, speak about Shema. Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad. When we say that a God is one, we don't just mean there's one God. On the ultimate level, when we say Hashem is Echad, Hu Echad ve'ein Sheni, that His oneness precludes the existence of anything else apart from Him. Something which is truly one, there can be Ein Sheni, there can be no other. Which of course is a problem. Because if Hashem is Echad and His Achdus precludes the existence of anything else, then who exactly is saying this Kriya Shema? Shema really is a weapon. Because a person can go through his life and see himself as the center of existence. And really that's the way, if you think about it, that's the way we really live most of our lives. We go through our lives, we see ourselves as the center of things. I know I exist. As we said before, that's the most certain of all cognition. I exist. It's very easy to turn that into a kind of avodah zarah. It's very easy to turn that into a kind of, hey, I'm here, I know I'm here, I don't know about the rest of you guys, maybe you're just this, super duper IMAX presentation that's going on. And in point of fact, that's what Paro did. It says in the Novi, that Paro made himself into an Elohus, into a God. It says in the Pasuk, Li hayo'or, to me is the river, va'ani asisini, and I made myself. Now, Paro wasn't a stupid person. He was an extremely brilliant mind. And his mind took him to the following. The fact that I exist proves the necessity of my existence. If I'm here, it means that I have to be here. And in point of fact, each one of us know instinctively that we're eternal. We know we came from somewhere, and we know that we're going somewhere. The transitory nature of the body that we're in, that we see dying and decomposing, everybody deep inside each one of us, we know that who we are is eternal. Paro understood that's what it means to make himself into a god, is the fact of my existence proves the necessity of my existence. And we say the other way around. No. There's only one existence that has to be. He is the Mechuyav HaMetziut, and that is HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And my sense of my own eternity is just one way that Hashem is expressing Himself in His world. It's the complete flip. Because a person can say to himself, Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu, Ani Echad, I'm here. A Jew says, no, Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad. On the ultimate level, what that means is that I really exist only to the extent that I'm an expression of Him. That is what Emunah means. That is emunah in the deepest sense, that I understand and I surrender, so to speak, the deepest sense of my own existence to the existence of the Borei, of the Creator. In fact, it says in the Sfarim that for a split second, when a person says Hashem Echad, he should think Einod Milvado. There is nothing else except for Hashem. But a person can only think that for a split second. It says Rotza V'Shav, talking about the Malachim. Rotza V'Shav, run to that idea and come back. We're not allowed to live in that world, in the world of Hashem Echad. Because we live in a world where there's something called Shabbos and there's something called Yimei Chol, there's something called Treif and there's something called Kosher, there's something called Tuma, there's something called Tahara. There are distinctions in this world. We do not, and we've not been given a world to live in from our perspective of Hashem Echad. And in point of fact, very serious mistakes have been made in the history of the Jewish people. For example, Shabtai Tzvi was Mate Eishes Ish, based on this idea of Hashem Echad. Hey, if Hashem is Echad, He's everywhere. You know, like Chas v'Chalila, I could take a Sefer Torah into the bathroom because Hashem is Echad. Hashem's everywhere. We're not allowed to live in that world, and that world is a world that has a tremendous potential for destructiveness. But twice a day we are commanded, when we say Echad, to visit that place where nothing else exists apart from Hashem. That is emunah, where I surrender the deepest sense of my own existence, self-evident beneath all knowledge, to the fact that Hashem exists. Okay. I think we'll leave it there. I'm going to pause now for questions. As I said, this is it's a deep idea, and if you can grasp it, and next time you say Krishma, if you go to this place, this is really how I understand what it means, Emunah Sinai. This is the awareness which has allowed the Jewish people to be Moser Nefesh, to give up their lives, Al Kiddush Hashem, throughout the generations. We're not a nation that proselytizes killing ourselves. The Jewish idea of martyrdom is if a person is required and needs to give up his soul, he will do it. And he understands that it's not really a change for me. But we don't believe that martyrdom means sending off our children in the morning with their sandwiches and an explosive belt. That's something which is very foreign to Judaism. In other words, we don't train our children to gleefully try and kill themselves. No people in the world are more pro-life than the Jewish people. And yet, when necessary, we understand that we are able to be Moser Nefesh. Where does that come from? It's not something intellectual. It's when we tap into the deepest knowledge of our own existence, sublimate that, surrender that. And when we say Shem Echad, we express, we are literally Moser Nefesh, and that's why maybe a Jew is Moser, gives up his soul when he is called upon to give up his life to be Mekadosh Shem Shemaim. He says Shema Yisrael because in Shema Yisrael really I'm giving up my soul twice a day, the deepest certainty of my own existence to the existence of the Borei, Kadosh Baruch Hu. That's what happened at Sinai. That's Anochi. That's what Hashem put inside every Jewish soul. That's what we're celebrating at Shavous. That's what being mechazik at Shavous. That twice a day recitation of Shema Yisrael when we say Echad, that's the moment we give up that deepest sense of our own identity to the existence of a Borei Shalom. Yeah.
So I wanted to ask, how do we understand eternal do we understand the soul as eternal or no?
For sure.
Since, I mean, I hear, but the thing is, see, if the soul was created or not. Because if the soul is created,
The soul is a part of Hashem. Is a chelek melokar milamal. The soul is a part of Hashem, which is why, which really is eternal. It really fits in exactly with what we're saying here.
Why can Emunah and the knowledge of Hashem and the willingness to therefore give up your life once you understand that He's there and everything that He is, why can't that be something you reach intellectually?
Because
was it not that for Avram Avinu?
Avram Avinu arrived at a belief in Hashem which was based on logic, but after that Hashem revealed Himself to him. I think that any intellectual belief will always lack the conviction of what I'm talking about tonight, because anything intellectual is always capable, it's always possible that a person, if he's honest, can think to himself, well, hey, maybe I made a mistake in my calculations here. Maybe I didn't think of something. Anything which requires me to come to a conclusion intellectually is always subject to the doubt that, maybe if somebody comes along and gives me another piece of information that I hadn't thought of, that, wow, that's right. And my emunah just went out the window. Something which is beyond thought, something where a person experiences. The perception of his very existence as no more than Hashem expressing one aspect of Himself in the world. That is not something which is intellectual. And therefore, it can never be mistaken. That is what I believe was given over to us at Sinai. And that is what we're celebrating at Shavous, essentially. Of course, we're also celebrating the giving of the Torah, but the giving of the Torah was an experience. Moshe Kibel, something called Torah Sinai. And as I said before, the actual physical Torah that we have comes from Yom Kippur. But what was given to us at Shavous was this deepest perception that our own existence is inextricably linked up with the belief in a Borei Olam.